I'd just say her naughtiness. She would be just so funny. She would just do such silly things that would make you laugh. I could have 16 text calls from her in one day, just to tell me she loved me, cared for me. And then with the bits you miss.
For Phyllis Daly, the last years of her daughter's life were a constant battle to try to keep her safe. But when she lost that fight, when Jessie died, she didn't realise another was beginning. One that would take almost 5 years of her life and nearly destroy her. A fight to prove her daughter's death was a direct result of domestic abuse.
Why does it need a 4.5-year battle, sleepless nights? Why does nobody link domestic abuse and suicide together?
Phyllis says Jessie was always a vulnerable young woman. When she met the man who would be her final partner, Patrick Walsh, Phyllis said Jessie lived in hope he would be the one. But soon she was reporting living in fear, being controlled in every sense, mentally, physically and sexually abused.
He would strangle her till she was unconscious, and I gather now he'd done this many a time before, and she'd promised herself the next time he would do that she would call the police, because she strongly believed she was going to die.
She fled, moving 50 miles to be closer to her family. By now struggling with mental health problems and alcohol addiction, she was in the care of a number of different agencies. But Walsh found out where she lived and contacted her again. Jessie reported on multiple occasions she felt suicide was the only way out. She was found dead at home in February 2018.
The family were told there would be an inquest. It would take around 2 hours. But Phyllis wanted a much more forensic investigation into what had happened to Jessie, a so-called Article 2 inquest. She set about researching domestic abuse, suicide and every aspect of the law. It would take 5 years and nearly destroy her, but she finally got the inquest she'd fought for.
The inquest heard there were huge failings by all the authorities, not least that they had failed completely to understand Jess, to actually hear her when she told them she felt suicidal because of her abuser.
Nobody worked multi-agency. Nobody saw the need to communicate with each other. If she told one person, actually the perpetrators found me, I want to jump off a local bridge and take my life because he will control my life again, chose not to share that with anybody else. And that was the biggest failure of all.
In what is believed to be the first ruling of its kind in the UK, the coroner Lorraine Harris explicitly linked Jessie's suicide with domestic abuse, writing that the underlying cause of her illness was domestic abuse. She also wrote, the recognition of suicidality and its link to domestic abuse was given insufficient weight.
The tears just came into our eyes. We was just so proud of ourselves. We're so proud that we'd done it for Jess. And along the journey, people used to say to me, your Jessie would be proud. And actually, no, she wouldn't have been proud. She would have never have wanted this journey for me, this last 4.5 years. She wouldn't have wanted the heartache. But actually, that one day when I got that result, I knew my daughter would have been proud of me on that day. That is the only one day I thought she would be proud of me. And yeah, I did that for her.
The coroner was so concerned by the evidence she heard during Jessie's inquest that she went further still. She issued a rare prevention of future deaths report, writing to the Home Secretary, the Justice Secretary, the Health Secretary to demand urgent action. She called for recognition of the link between domestic abuse and suicide across all authorities, for better training and awareness, particularly for frontline police officers. Every single government department is yet to respond.
The inquest heard evidence from Jessie's former partner, Patrick Walsh. He denied abusing her and said they were very much in love. It also heard police had charged him with assaulting Jessie when she was alive, but the charge was dropped when she withdrew from the process. Phyllis's lawyer is already supporting a number of other families fighting to prove the link between domestic violence and the suicide of their loved one. She says it's vital all agencies learn from the findings of Jessie's inquest.
If agencies don't recognise domestic abuse and don't do anything to prevent it, that can often lead to a sense of victims feeling a complete sense of entrapment, that there is nothing that is no one is going to stop what is happening to them. And unfortunately, that often leads to people feeling that there is no way out, and unless people have a proper understanding of the risk factors associated with domestic abuse that aren't just risk to the woman's life from the perpetrator, but also risk as a result of mental health, then yes, we will see more deaths.
Phyllis says all suicides where there has been a history of domestic violence should be given the same forensic inquest she won for Jessie. And she said the government must urgently create a national database of suicide victims with domestic abuse in their backgrounds.
We have to start acknowledging how many victims there is. We have to start collating figures, because if we don't know how many people, I think it's going to be a national shock when people start realising how many women or men, any victims, but we know predominantly women, take their own lives as a result of domestic abuse. And I think that will be a big shock to the nation.
But it has all come at a cost to Phyllis in every sense.
It's took away my whole life from my children and grandchildren, and I regret that dearly, that I've allowed it to take away from them, which hopefully I can make up more to them now. But financially, the cost has nearly took my home away from me.
Phyllis tends the corner of her garden where a rose grows for her daughter. She says she looks for the beauty that was in Jessie's life and holds on to that every day.
I do insist to have happy times over Jess. So on the anniversary of her death, I always go out and have a massive afternoon tea. I have something really, really nice, and on her birthday, we go out and celebrate. We will not allow the perpetrator to take that from us.
Well, joining me now are Jane Monckton-Smith, Professor of Public Protection at the University of Gloucestershire, whose work has been looking at domestic violence, homicide and suicide, and from Westminster Labour's Jess Phillips, who is Shadow Minister for Domestic Violence and Safeguarding. Professor Monckton-Smith, there are many cases like Jessie's. What did your research find in terms of how common these cases are and the patterns you discovered?
Is far more common than we realise or that we even acknowledge. We've been putting the figure out there that 2 women a week are losing their lives to domestic abuse. If you include suicides, we're probably talking closer to 10 women a week. And there are direct links, and the research that I have done shows that what Sophie was saying just now, entrapment is absolutely key. The victims are feeling completely trapped in the relationships. The authorities are not really doing anything to protect them or free them. And it sometimes feels to them that death is the only answer.
I mean, we know that the Samaritans always make clear it's important not to attribute one single cause to suicide, but the coroner here directly linked the domestic abuse and the suicide. And I just wonder how significant that finding is for you.
For me, I'm so pleased that the coroner has done that. So pleased, because we've been waiting for something like this for so long to make that direct link. Because I think in cases of domestic abuse suicide, there is a single causal link, and that is that the abuse and the stalking and the control gets unmanageable, gets terrifying, and the authorities are not managing to keep these perpetrators away. And we need this to be taken really seriously and urgently.
Jess Phillips, the coroner said, you know, there is this absolute need for a better recognition of this link that we're talking about now, that the processes and policies in place don't seem to include that, they don't seem to take that on board. Are you surprised that they're still not joining the dots?
I mean, I wish I could say I was surprised. Listening to Phyllis speak about Jessie, I felt myself welling up, and not simply out of sadness and sorrow, but out of sheer frustration. of, for the past 15 years of my life, hearing the same story, being told again and again about services not working properly together and new recommendations for training for police officers or GPs. It is absolutely maddening and not at all surprising in this case that the outcome was as it was, I am afraid to say.
And it's exactly that point, isn't it? That the failings in the case clearly don't surprise either of you. But the critical thing is it's that lack of understanding about the potential risk of suicide, why that understanding needs to be much better, doesn't it?
It absolutely needs to be much better, and I have to say it has been, thanks to the work of people like Jane and many other bereaved families, just like Jessie's, fighting for many years about not just suicide but also sudden unexplained deaths, or deaths by misadventure, or deaths by substance misuse, where there has been a history of domestic abuse, have tried to make this link. And so the coroner's findings are very, very important. What is harrowing from your report, I have to say, is that the coroner demanded that the government departments who lead on this policy respond by I think it was the 23rd of August this year, and none of them have responded. I find it absolutely shocking that nothing has been done, or that the severe nature and actual findings of this report doesn't seem to have piqued anybody's interest.
I mean, the government obviously would say that they are committed to support the victims of domestic violence. Jane Monckton-Smith, Phyllis asked directly to government in that piece, we need to count these women. Briefly, if you would. I mean, the government say they are counting these cases. Are they, in your experience?
In my experience, they are not. I had a campaign at the beginning of this year to try and get the government to start counting domestic abuse related deaths, and that means the homicides and the suicides. And we could find nowhere where there was a formal count of the number of deaths. And that's why we felt we had to have that campaign. And this campaign was mentioned in the House of Commons. So if there were known figures somewhere, I don't know why that MP would have brought it up in the House of Commons. We need to be counting. As I said just now, we've been saying 2 women a week losing their lives. I say again, no, it's more like 10 women a week or more.
Jess Phillips, Jane Monckton-Smith, I'm sorry we can't keep talking about this, but we will return to that. Thanks for talking to us this evening, though. And if you have been affected by any of the issues covered in our report and interviews, you can find a range of places to seek help on channel4.com/support.